Proud supporters of Africa this week. Engine, with us, you are number one.
The South African Institute of International Affairs is an independent, non-governmental think tank established to encourage wider and more informed awareness of the importance of international affairs. Peter Draper, Senior Research Fellow at the South African Institute of International Affairs, spoke to Bronwyn Nielsen about South Africa's entry into BRICS this week.
Well, there's some truth to that. There's no doubt that President Zuma pursued a very active lobbying process. Actually, it's a testament to his foreign policy that he succeeded in getting us in. And the criticism is that by begging for a seat at the table, we lose any leverage. I personally don't buy that point of view. I think South Africa has a pretty proud tradition of an independent foreign policy. Our vote, ironically, in favour of the no-fly zone in Libya, where the BRICS members abstained, is testament to that. So I think when we need to insist on certain things, we will do so.
But in terms of size, do we have any might at the table? If we look at the fact that China's economy is 16 times that of South Africa and their population 268 times the size of South Africa's population.
No, we're not a BRIC. That's very clear, and even Jim O'Neill would say that, and I'm sure he said it many times. But that's not what this is about. This is not a Goldman Sachs initiative. This is an initiative designed to reform global economic governance primarily. It's been established as a counterweight to the G7 principally, and so it will address issues that the G7 has already addressed and is addressing. Things like, for instance, climate change talks, world trade negotiations, although Russia is not a member of the WTO, and that points to some differences in the group, and of course the G20 Heads of State Summit.
Can we leverage the fact that we've got one of the strongest banking systems across the globe?
We can. That would be a specific reference to the G20 talks, particularly where South Africa is a significant financial actor. But I'm not sure that's the major game in the G20 anymore, so I don't know what significance that would be.
And the fact that we are the gateway to Africa, although we don't have the mandate from other African countries to specifically represent the continent, can we use that as some form of leverage?
Well, one could apply the same logic to Brazil. Brazil doesn't represent Latin America, but it is the most significant actor certainly in South America, in Central perhaps, but also North America. In terms of Latino countries, Mexico is a significant actor, so why isn't Mexico at the table, for example? So if you want to take that logic, can India represent South Asia, can China represent East Asia, I think that logic starts to break down. Really, China stands in a league of its own. Let's be clear about that. Brazil, India, certainly South Africa are also RANs. Russia is a former great power, it is no longer a great power. What is the purpose of this initiative? It's to bring together key regional powers to discuss issues of global.
Côte d'Ivoire's former president, Laurent Gbagbo, is currently in the custody of internationally recognized President Alassane Ouattara at the Gulf Hotel in Abidjan. And France has ruled out long-term military presence in the country. Dr. David Zoumenu, a senior researcher in the African Conflict Prevention Program at the Institute of Security Studies, spoke to us about the prospects for lasting peace in the country.
Either he is handed over to the International Criminal Court to actually face the charges of gross human rights violation, or he might be managed somewhere in a very luxurious presidential residence in Abidjan. Time for Alassane Ouattara to really assume effectively power and to extend the authority of the country, the authority of the state throughout the country. But the first option is problematic because handing him over to the ICC now begs the question as to who is responsible, or is he the only responsible of the atrocities? And then it can also have a potential to further the division that is already visible in Cote d'Ivoire. And I don't think Alassane Ouattara wants to take that route now, which means handing him to the ICC might not be a priority. And the excuse might be give us a chance to see if a domestic jurisdiction can really help us to deal with some of the issues that had been raised while managing him.
The biggest challenge, it seems, for Alassane Ouattara is retaining the peace and creating some sense of law and order, because as we know, there isn't really a gendarme in Ivory Coast. The army isn't integrated. Militia are loyal to various political forces. How's he going to sort that out?
I think with security sector reform, will be a priority in Alassane Ouattara's plan, because if you want to govern, you need to get that set of rights right at the beginning. Cote d'Ivoire does not have a national army anymore. I think the whole thing has become militarized, and you need to get it straight. Fortunately, in my view, I think the Ouagadougou peace agreement made provision for that. Some efforts had been undertaken, so they just need to further those efforts and complete the process that had been started since 2007, and he has the leverage to do that. The gendarmerie hierarchy has come to pledge allegiance to him, and they really put the institution under his leadership, waiting for instruction from him to really deploy and assume peace and stability in Cote d'Ivoire. It is not going to be an easy task.
Now, the African Union has finally devised an exit strategy for Libya's Gaddafi, but analysts wonder whether the AU will be able to sustain the economic impact of Gaddafi's exit, and how will this affect the implementation of peace. Dr. Sylvester Maposa, Chief Research Specialist and Head of the Peace and Security Unit at the Africa Institute of South Africa.
There is no one single process to it. The Libyan conflict is very complex, and so all approaches, they'll all help to complement each other. Indeed, there's no one actor, no one strategy.
I mean, the African Union is talking ceasefire, political reforms and dialogue. They're really not saying exit strategy for Mr. Gaddafi. They're falling short of actually making that kind of conclusive arrangement for the Libyan situation. Is the African Union compromised?
This is not new. We have seen it before. The African Union, through its regional economic arrangements, has failed to come up with effective exit strategies in situations where such stalemates have existed. Look at the Zimbabwean situation, the Ivory Coast, the Madagascar. There are many areas where the African Union has failed to come up with.
But going back to the Libyan situation, particularly and specifically, are they compromised? Because we know that Libya, through the auspices of Colonel Gaddafi, has been one of the top 5 financiers of the African Union.
Well, yes, in one way they are compromised because Libya has been funding the African Union, but at the same time, this mirrors a weakness on the part of the African Union, because if they are not able to package exit strategies for such circumstances because of funding purposes, then we miss the point of policing the continent.
Beyond policy, let's talk about the practicalities. The formation of the African Union after the Organization of African Union was largely a decision that was given momentum by Colonel Gaddafi at an AU summit, or an OAU summit in Sirte, Libya. The building blocks and the financing thereof came from Libya. Other Pan-African organizations, such as the African Development Bank, have within the 77 shareholder base of that institution, Libya making up one of the top 8 financial contributors. This economic muscle that Libya has within the Pan-African solidarity infrastructure, does it create an interesting and a complex dynamic for the diplomatic initiative?
Well, looked at an individual level, yes, we might make such an analysis, but Libya is not Gaddafi, and therefore the African Union should not protect Gaddafi because the funding that has been happening is not a personal funding, but it's a Libyan funding process, which we believe a new government, if it has genuine interest for the African cause, will continue the funding process.
Let's talk about a new government, if indeed that is what the Libyan people decide. One of the hallmarks of Colonel Gaddafi's foreign affairs and international relations has been trying to bridge the gap between Arab North Africa and African or black sub-Saharan Africa. He has championed the idea of a United States for Africa with a common currency, and even prior to the African Union, he was very supportive of sub-Saharan African liberation movements. Many of them have received military training and political support from the Libyan Libyan state under Colonel Gaddafi. That role he's played in trying to bridge the gap between the Maghreb and Africa, is it something that can be followed through if he's not there?
Yes, this has been there in the books during the time of the Casablanca and the Monrovia conflict when the OAU was formed. There were these challenges and there were these dreams of a united Africa and a peaceful Africa. And one issue that is important in all this process is from a conflict resolution perspective, it's important that we should be able to distinguish between genuine grievances, genuine causes, and predatory actions. Particularly if Muammar Gaddafi has been doing this for a germane cause for African development, then we should not see him positioning himself for a greater muscle to control the continent. So we have predatory intentions, and we have genuine intentions for building Africa.